Tonight, we're going to talk about mysteries. Because I believe that mysteries are more true and more abundant than facts. And they are therefore more important to know how to deal with. Allow me to demonstrate for just a moment. Science claims to know a lot of things, and we've learned a lot of things because of science. But the more science discovers, the more we find that they've actually just discovered how much more we don't know. For instance, mass is a basic concept for physics. Most of us probably used it at some point to solve for acceleration or something like that. But mass is also used to help us understand concepts like space, inertia, and gravity. But what is mass? Well, and Paul Hicks might be able to correct me a little more on this, give it some nuance if I called him up here, but it's sort of like a measurement of matter. At least that's one of its uses. But what's matter? Well, it's atoms. Well, what are atoms? Well, they're particles. Well, what are particles? Well, they're quarks. Well, what are quarks? Well, quarks are quarks. And we have some other funny names that I could go down the list, but essentially, quarks are elementary particles, which cannot be subdivided. In other words, we have no idea what quarks are. They're the end that we can see. But of course, the Greeks thought the end of what we could see was the atom. So we don't know what's behind the wall of quarks, which means we don't know what mass is, which means we don't know what space is, or inertia is, or gravity, etc. So we don't know nearly as much as we think we know. In fact, we know far more mysteries than we know facts. And therefore, how we deal with mystery is far more important than how we deal with those facts. And those mysteries tend to be more true. Socrates is called the wisest man in Athens. And it's because he believed that he knew nothing. Not in spite of it, because he accepted the mysteries, not because he tried to solve them. In the Baptist tradition, baptism and the Lord's Supper are called ordinances. The term ordinance meant those practices for the church worship that were clearly prescribed in the New Testaments. Well, it just so happens that in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, those very same practices are called mysteries. Why is that? Do we know something that they don't? Well, I think perhaps it's because these things are beyond us. They are hovering beyond our boundaries, daring us to come closer. They're like breathing a fine mist that you know you've done it, but once you have, it seems like perhaps nothing has changed, but you know it's not true. Something has changed. And when we are baptized, when we participate in the Lord's Supper, we are experiencing a divine and beautiful mystery, a calling of God on our lives to perform acts which should have no great effect, and yet are deeply and profoundly meaningful. The bread is bread. The juice is juice. The water is water, and yet it is more. It is a mystery. G.K. Chesterton is a little bit famous for his love of mysteries. In fact, he wrote a whole series called Father Brown that focused on the solving of mysteries. And he had a very interesting comment on this in his very famous book, Orthodoxy. Mysticism, and this is an old book, he's referring to an idea of mysteries. Mysticism keeps men sane. As long as you have mystery, you have health. When you destroy a mystery, you create morbidity. The ordinary man has always been sane because the ordinary man has always been a mystic. He has permitted the twilight. He has always had one foot in earth and the other in fairyland. He has always left himself free to doubt his gods, but unlike the agnostic of today, free also to believe in them. He has always cared more for truth than for consistency, for if he saw two truths that seemed to contradict each other, he would take the two truths and the contradiction along with them. The whole secret of mystery is this, that man can understand everything by the help of what he does not understand. Church, our God is one God, but he is three persons. This is a mystery, but this is true. Our Lord Jesus is God who took on flesh. Jesus is divine, yet he is a man. This is a mystery, yet this is true. The Spirit dwells in each one of us, yet he is with the Godhead on high. We are elected, yet we are free. We are sinners, yet we are loved. Therefore, we must understand how to deal with the mysteries in our lives. The doctrinal, the scientific, and the practical. The mysteries of our own hearts. Those reactions, situations, and relationships we do not understand. For the mysteries pervade our faith, our world, and our lives. In the Greek, the word for these things is mysterion, a hidden thing, a secret, not obvious to the understanding. It is something which draws you in, not something that pushes you away. It is something which is asking to be revealed. It is an invitation, an opportunity to allow those mysteries to confront us and to illuminate our lives. In the Old Testament, Greek text known as the Septuagint, there's one other connotation of mystery that's important for me to share with you today. And that is of a dream, a vision. And that's what brings us to Daniel chapter 2 today. Hopefully many of you are already there, but I'll begin reading. Verse 1. In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. And the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and its interpretation. The king is faced with a mystery, with a dream, a vision, a mysterion. And it troubles him. It confuses him in his spirit. Because you see, when he had this dream, he knew that it meant something more than what he could understand. It was, in fact, an invitation into something beyond his comprehension, into a plan that he could not have formed for himself. He could have seen it as an invitation. He could have stepped into it in faith, believing that there would be a revelatory intervention. And yet, instead, he called to the magicians, to the enchanters, to the Chaldeans. He called while confused and angry. And where did this response come from? Well, it seems that it was from his desire for control, needing things to be his own way, a desire not to be affected from the outside. Fundamentally, it came from fear. Because you see, mysteries make us feel powerless. Because somewhere deep in our bones, we know they are important. Perhaps even more important than the things we see with our eyes in the real world. The mysteries are beyond our capacity to know and understand. And when you are desperate to be in control of your own life, mysteries can make you angry. And they can make you feel confused, which probably will make you feel angrier. Because it makes you feel so small. Maybe even stupid, because you can't understand. may be worthless because you don't know how to act on it. So you try to take back control. You lash out at whoever comes near you. And you could perhaps make the argument that, well, he was trying to understand the dream. He was trying to have it revealed. He did go ask for his advisors. Yeah, he did do that. Maybe you have something. But if he was really accepting it as an invitation, if he really wanted to know in sort of an honest and good spirit, why did he just call the magicians? Daniel was there. Daniel's already been a part of the story. Why did he just call the magicians? Why didn't he call Daniel? And why did he threaten them? What did he have to lose if they couldn't do it? He could have just waited. He could have waited for it to be revealed. Maybe he could have prayed to his own gods, but he didn't do any of that. His knee-jerk reaction was to reach out for the thing that he always reached out for, which was a group of people that he knew on any ordinary day he could control. Because he was the king, and these were his servants, and he held their lives in his hands. And though he had a dream that he knew was going to affect the rest of his future, he chose to take a course of action that he could just get his hands on, rather than face what was actually before him. But you know, this is not a good look for a leader. It's not a good look for anyone, but especially not for someone who can control and or deeply affect the lives of others. Exerting your control over other people will not make you feel better. Making others small will never make us bigger. It just proves how afraid you really are. Afraid of the world knowing how small and how weak you might truly be. But the king's minions didn't respond so well either. Let's turn back to the text together. And let's pick up at verse 7. He's just asked them, "Therefore, show me the dream and its interpretation." And they answered a second time and said, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show its interpretation." The king answered and said, "I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time, because you see that the word from me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation." The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand. For no great and powerful king is asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the kings ask is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh." Because of this, the king was angry and very furious, and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. They start off pretty strong. "Just tell us the dream, king. We got it. We can do it. No problem. You just tell us what's going on." You know, they might have even been thinking, "Man, this guy's really upset. We might be able to tell him something really good. We might be able to really get something out of this." You know, who knows what they were thinking as he came into that room. You know, maybe they even saw the weakness. Maybe they even saw the fear in him, and they were ready to take advantage of it. But then the king starts to ask the impossible. He starts to pose to them a new mystery. What's the dream? Tell me the thing I know you don't know. And so what do? What are they supposed to do? It seems kind of unjust, doesn't it? Well, they start by stalling. And then they start to call it impossible. And where does this response come from? Well, it's similar to the king, right? This is a fear of the person who is in control, and fear of being ignorant, of shown up as frauds. You could probably make the argument that they have virtually the same response, but I think there's some nuance to this that is pretty helpful. Because first, they just ignore the mystery. They're like, "No, we don't want the mystery. Just tell us what it is, and then we'll say the words we had already planned to say." right? Just tell us what the mystery is. They don't want a mystery of their own. They just want to hear the king so that they can explain it. But then the mystery doesn't make itself known. The king isn't willing to tell them. Well, what are they to do? Ignoring it didn't work. Shock and awe. Ignoring things doesn't make them go away. It's right there in the Bible. It's pretty annoying. we often wish it did make them go away, but the ignoring doesn't work. And the king, knowing the importance of this dream, remains firm. Well, if they can't ignore the dream, then they have to discredit the dream, right? How dare you, king? No one's asked this of a Chaldean or a wise man in centuries. If ever, this is your fault. You're asking too much. This mystery isn't for me. This is your problem. This has nothing to do with me. It's certainly not my fault. Shifting the blame, doing anything to not be proven false. These men are terrified of their true selves, their true hearts being revealed. Terrified that they will be shown not to know what they claimed to know, not to be able to do what they claimed to do, and not to be who they claimed to be. So if possible, they'd like to ignore the mystery. But if not, they'll just call it impossible. They'll shift the blame. It's not their fault. It's not their problem, it's the king's problem. Maybe it's even the God's problem. Yet a mystery ignored is a mystery that may never be known. And to claim it's impossible to know is merely to say, I am unable to know it, and I am unwilling to ask for the help I require to know it. This is a response motivated by selfishness and fear. Fear of being shown a fraud. But how does Daniel respond? Let's turn back to our text. Picking up in verse 13. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He declared to Arioch, the king's captain, "Why is the decree of the king so urgent?" Then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel. And Daniel went in and requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. We knew even as we started the story that Daniel wouldn't respond the same way as the wise men of Babylon. But he was faced with an even worse situation, right? He's woken up, you can imagine, in the middle of the night, guards storming down his door and saying, "Well, it's time for you to die. The king has sentenced you to death." Oh, really? And he had the presence of mind to ask questions, to act prudently, as the text says. Though, despite the fact he was faced first with the mystery of why are these people here, then the mystery of why is the king's calling so urgent, then the same mystery that the wise men have faced with the king, and ultimately the same mystery the king had. Daniel is faced at every single possible level of mystery in this situation. And yet, he prevails. Because what is his response? His response is the antidote to the fear that drove the king and the wise men. It is humility and prayer. Because Daniel, as a leader, was not afraid to reveal his weakness. because he was himself led by God. He's allowed to be weak because God is strong. Therefore, he doesn't need to lash out or make others feel small. He doesn't need to give in to anger and confusion because in his humility, he considers others as beloved as himself. He doesn't need to call on those who have anything to gain, but chose instead to call on those who understood his weaknesses and could bear it with him. As a servant, Daniel didn't need to fear being found out as a fraud because he never claimed to be able to do anything in his own power. He was wise because God gave him wisdom. He received the mystery not because he was capable, but because he asked God to give it to him. In his humility, Daniel could see the invitation of the mystery, and by his prayers, he accepted that invitation. Daniel didn't need to ignore the mystery. He didn't need to call it impossible. When the king is confronted with a mystery, he lashes out. But when Daniel is confronted with the same mystery, he seeks to understand. When faced with death, the magicians shift the blame. But when Daniel is faced with death, he prudently unveils the problem. The king calls for magicians, and Daniel calls for men of God. The magicians stall for more time, and Daniel asks for time to pray. The king asks the impossible. The magicians refuse the impossible, but Daniel submits the impossible to the God who makes all things possible. Amen. Mysteries are more abundant and more true than facts. So consider how you are responding to those mysteries that are constantly invading your life. Are you acting like the king because you share his fears? Trying to regain some measure of control on the things in your life that you don't understand? Are you like the magicians? Afraid of being shown to be a fraud? Afraid of being found out to be ignorant? Are you willing to ignore and to blame the challenging mysteries that God sets before you in your life because you might be shown up? You might not be able to handle them by yourself? Or are you responding as Daniel responded, with prayer and humility, recognizing the mysteries God places in our lives as invitations that can be accepted by the power of prayer? I'd like to share a poem with you before I leave, because I think this is a very difficult word. It has been for me. It's not as easy as a snap of your fingers. And because I have the privilege of preaching next week, we're going to dive more deeply into that response from Daniel. Where did it come from? How did he have the kind of character to respond that way? How do we too? But until then, I'd like to share with you a poem that I think captures some of this challenge and also sees a little bit of hope. I don't know what I don't know, standing before a bank of clouds as far as I could see. Fogs and figures ebb and flow, nimbus mountains fall like shrouds, misty rivers pour up into an empty ocean beyond my dreams. Within this realm are paths untold, obscured by watery veil. My hands pass through, but not my sight, my feet, but not my plans. Inside my chest, my heart grows cold, clinging to my untold tale. I stood stock still as the shadows grew. Clouds ate up the light. But when stars pressed down on cirrus sands, new shapes in those clouds began to form. Monsters breached the swirling walls, cracking open foggy doors, waiting, watching, hungry, frightening. I waited, watching, frozen, frightened. Where could I go from here? How could I move forward? Progress blocked by shifting horrors until a gentle wind blew through. A breath, a whisper brushed my ear and moved my hair. Had I not felt it, I would not have known it there. But I saw my path advance an inch midst the dewy walls, a labyrinthine way unfolding one more step, forming that cloudy hall, which I had to step into. For my tale was yet untold, my songs yet unsung. If I was to stop here, if I turned around, all the hope that I once had would rot into the ground. My hope would die before my soul before my life. So to the path I turn my face. Though ice embrace my veins, though darkness wrap my eyes, though fogs seep in my soul, though mist with sickly tendrils clutch my pounding heart, one more step into the billowing hall. Another. Then I notice one small fleck of light. A gentle ray, like a tiny diamond gleams. Is this the next step I should take? I would have never seen it 3 steps back. For that ray pierces through in just one place. A thinning of the mist, a bareness in the fog. Round I turned to view my path, short though it had been. Yet like a veil torn by thick set hands, the fogging hall had opened wide. I saw beside my mirror 3 steps, a trap, a hole, a pit, a snare. Things I could have never known were there, and on each footprint I had left, a tiny glimmer glowed. Little hints I had not seen, but now reduced the cold that wrapped my heart and slowed my legs. For steps had been prepared. I may not have seen through the clouds, the monsters I may have feared, but in the clouds there was a path, and on that path there was a light. I turned around to face the clouds once more, still only a glimmer in the night beside my feet, and fear crept around my neck. It stroked my cheek. It turned my head. Go back, it said. I almost did. Until that gentle breeze did blow right past my ear and through my hair. For then I saw once again a new inch on my path midst those misty walls. So now, through the clouds, I bolt headlong, and fear can't match my stride. Now I have seen those Nimbus mountains fall like gentle spring rain. Those Cirrus sands couldn't slow my feet, and those monsters stay indoors. The clouds, the mist, the fogs don't trouble me anymore. For now it's light that pierces them, blinding me to what's beyond. I still don't know what I don't know, standing before the clouds. But now I don't know what I don't know, as I run into the light.